Hi everyone, Anka here. Welcome to the final day of the 5-day social media challenge. Today we're going to talk about analytics, but before we do that, Andrea's here with us again, so I wanted to make sure that you know she's in the chat too. And as usual, just reminding you that these sessions are recorded and that you will be getting the recording in a follow-up the next day. So, is everyone excited for analytics? I know I am, because on top of content creation, analytics are my second favorite in social media strategy. So, without further ado, let's get into it. By the way, as normal, we will have a Q&A session at the end, so you can always ask your questions in the Q&A box and we'll be able to address them at the end. So again, today is day 5. We're talking about analytics, and this is the last out of 5 days talking about everything you need to know to create a robust social media strategy. And just one more time before we begin, I also wanted to quickly remind you all that at the end of this challenge, so probably on Monday, we'll be announcing the 6 winners who will be getting prizes like the SocialBee free plans or SocialBee services or the lifetime plan to our sister company ACE meetings. And all you needed to do was be here with us throughout these 5 days. So I'm super excited to get things started. And I think it's time for us to do so. So today we're talking analytics, right? And let's start with why should you be checking your analytics? If the answer is to make informed decisions for your social media strategy, then you're correct. If your answer is to explain the use of your time and material resources to your management, then you are correct. And if your answer is to track your progress towards your social media goals, then you're also correct. So analytics are a major part of everything that's going to help you push forward or push your content forward towards your goals. So basically, while the first 4 days that we've worked on were focusing on creating the strategy and the step-by-step thing that you need to do in order to have a strategy, analytics are the ones that are going to tell you exactly where you're starting from in your strategy and how you can make it better moving forward. So these are really important to get right. And there are about 5 types of social media metrics that you need to prioritize. I'm sure there's more, but let's focus on 5 for now. Follower growth and audience size are there as follower growth and audience size. That's what I wrote there. I thought I was writing something else. Let me reiterate. Follower growth and audience size are there to kind of emphasize the impact that your brand has online. And for this, you can monitor analytics or metrics such as the actual follower growth, the follower growth rate, which is different than your actual follower growth, and then the size of your audience. And keep in mind that you need to do this via different channels that you're active on. Then we're going into awareness metrics, and here you can monitor metrics such as impressions, such as reach, things that will help with the awareness around your brand. You can then look at referral traffic, and this will help with making sure that you are using the right channels, especially on social. And it also refers to the UTM parameters that we learned about in a previous day. I believe in day 3, 2 or 3, we talked about UTM parameters. UTM parameters will help with referral traffic so that you know exactly where your audience is coming from into your website. Now, this type of traffic is seen in your Google Analytics or your website analytics. So not so much in social media, but it is connected to social media so that you can have a comprehensive analysis of everything. Let's talk about brand health metrics for a little while now. We've talked about how your audience should interact with you. And the way they interact, whether it's positive or not so much positive, I mean negative, can impact the health of your brand online. So look for the audience sentiment, see whether the ways in which your audience interacts with you is because they are enjoying interacting with your brand. To give you an example here, you'd see things like, I love SocialBee, posted online. That's a positive sentiment. On the other hand, if you see something like, my post failed on SocialBee, that's a negative sentiment online. So you need to make sure that at least you're working towards a more positive sentiment from your audience. And then finally, we have engagement metrics, which we did talk about a little bit yesterday. These metrics are all that you need to look for when it comes to engagement. So you can look at post engagement rates, you can look at likes, comments, shares, views, reactions, retweets, video completion rate, or retention rate, or video views, or whatever else it is out there on the platforms that you are currently using. So these are the 5 types of social media metrics that we're going to dive deeper into in today's session, starting with the follower growth and the audience size. Basically, this will tell you a more complete story about your channel's health, even though your goal may not be to grow an audience in itself. Your goal may be generating more sales, sure, but if you need to generate more sales, you need a broader audience to do that. So it kind of is incorporated into the majority of goals. And also, it's important to keep track of this metric because it does tell a more complete story about your channel's health. So here, we're going to look at metrics like follower growth, which is basically the net new followers that you gained in a specific time frame, usually per month. You can look at the follower growth rate, which is how rapidly or how slowly, on the other hand, your audience grows within that given time frame. Again, usually per month. And then you also look at the size of your audience, which is going to keep track of any changes in your follower count. And you can do this monthly, you can do it quarterly, you can do it yearly, but it is important data. It's an important data point that you need to have in order to have an overall bird's eye view of your metrics and your brand in general. So I have here on the slide 2 different examples that might be happening to you. So if you are looking at your analytics and you see that your follower growth stays the same from month to month, or even on a bad example, on a bad month, it's declining, it's pretty obvious that you need a new strategy to make sure that you reach the interests of your audience. Your target audience don't have their interests met within the content that you currently have. And so it's important for you to create a new strategy to make that happen. If, on the other hand, you have positive growth, you can look at your content, look at the types of content that you've created in the time that your brand has started growing, and see what you're doing to help this growth and see how you can improve it even further. So follower growth rate, audience size. These are the first three metrics that we're talking about. Then we're doing a recap from day 4 by going into social media engagement metrics. And here we're talking about shares, we're talking about retweets, talking about comments, we're talking about mentions, tagged or untagged. You're talking about new followers or new page likes. You're talking about clicks. You're talking about likes. You're talking about reactions and anything else that counts as an interaction with your brand. And just as a reminder, all of these will create your engagement rate, which is the sum of all these interactions divided by your total number of followers, or the reach multiplied by 100. And as a rule of thumb, if you have low engagement, then you need a new strategy to increase engagement, which is exactly what we spoke about yesterday in yesterday's session. So we talked about different ways and different tactics that you could use to increase engagement. So look for that engagement rate, see where you are. If your engagement rate is dropping, you need a new strategy to generate and to boost engagement. If your engagement is steady, you might want to keep it on an upward trajectory. Then we're going into awareness metrics. And with awareness metrics, you'll be able to see how many people see your content. So how many people are actually aware of that content, and how much attention does your business get on social media. So here, you'll see metrics like impressions, which are going to explain how many times your post gets seen in total. So I could generate 5, 10 impressions on the same post if I see the same post multiple times. On the other hand, we have reach, which is unique viewers on a post. So just to give you an example, if you have a reach of 1, but an impressions of 5, that's going to mean that the same person viewed your content 5 times. If you have a reach of 30, that means 30 people or 30 devices that are different have seen your post. And the number of impressions is usually a lot higher than the numbers of the reach. You're also going to look at things like video views, which on channels like TikTok, like Instagram, especially on the Reels, like YouTube, they count as impressions. So you can see it as well there. So these metrics together, when you put them together, they will give you a clear idea of how your content is performing. So just to give you an example here, if you have high reach, so let's say, you know what, 1,000, let's put that as high. 1,000 people saw your content. And low impressions, out of the 1,000 people, you have maybe 1,200 impressions, which is pretty low if you compare them, because that means not a lot of people revisited that content. Not a lot of the people who saw it the first time went in to see it again and again and again. So that could mean that your users are either not engaging with your content, or they're not interested in that content, or it might not be as impactful to them. This might not necessarily be a bad thing, though, depending on the goals that you have, so keep that in mind. Another example that you could be facing is having high reach and high impressions. This is the ideal scenario where people are seeing your posts, so you have been reaching a broader audience, and that audience has repeatedly seen your posts. It's obvious that this is positive. It's suggesting that your content is not only reaching the larger audience, but also capturing their attention and their interest. So that's, again, the ideal scenario that you want to have. On the other hand, if we look at the other end of the spectrum, if you have something like low reach and low impressions, this suggests limited visibility. So if this is the case, look at your content first, evaluate your content, look at your strategy, look at your posting times, look at your use of hashtags, and find a way to increase your reach and your impressions. I also have here in my notes a few more examples that we can talk about. So when you're putting together these awareness metrics together with engagement metrics that we've talked about in the previous slide, you can get 2 or 3 scenarios. I have 2 that I want to talk about specifically. High reach and low engagement rate. So if you're having a high reach, meaning that your audience is getting your content, but they're not interacting with it, you have low engagement rate. In this case, people might not have that incentive to interact with it. So you can look at maybe changing parts of your strategy when it comes to the engagement part. On the other hand, if you have low reach and low engagement rate, in this case, the cause of it is the limited visibility that you might have. So you want to look at changing your strategy when it comes to impacting the reach first, and then looking at the engagement, because impacting the reach or increasing the reach will ultimately also help with increasing your engagement as well. So what else could you do other than what we've already mentioned? Maybe look at patterns in the content and see where your content with the highest reach is and with the highest impressions number is, and see what types of content you're providing that is working that well. So look at things like the visual, look at the format, the themes that you're approaching in that type of content, and use this information to work on future content as well. You can also evaluate the impact of hashtags. So here you can identify which hashtags are reaching the right audiences for you and which are not. And usually social media platforms have some sort of metrics around hashtags that you can see how they are performing and how many people are coming to your post from a specific hashtag. You can also look at the metrics for awareness and figure out whether whether they're increasing, whether they're decreasing, or whether they're remaining stable, and correct any low points in your follower growth, in your awareness. But also look at the high points, look at the spikes that are in your awareness metrics and figure out where they are coming from. It might just be a fluke. It might be a contest that you've done, a giveaway that has spiked it, which is great, but it's not sustainable in the long run to keep it as a way of growing. But on the other hand, it might be that your content or certain parts of your content are that great that generated real curiosity and real engagement from your audiences. So look at that type of content and figure out what worked really well so that you can use it again in the future. This basically will help you with understanding the impact that your overall content has on your channel, really. Moving on, we have social media referral traffic. Now in here, we're talking about traffic coming from people who visit your website directly from social media pages or from posts, right? So usually if you have a post that has a link in it, you're sending your audience to your website so that they can then go to your landing page or to your homepage or to your blog page or so on and so forth. Usually if someone comes from social media to your website, it's a great sign. It means that you've generated interest. And the best way to measure this, as we've spoken before, is to use UTM parameters. UTM tracking, universal tracking metrics, is the greatest way to monitor all traffic in your Google Analytics to make sure that you're seeing which platforms work best and which not. So I'm sure all of you have heard that Pinterest is a great source of traffic. It might be so for some industries, but for others, it might not be the perfect one. So if we're looking at the UTM parameters and figuring out what platforms you're active on, you can see effectively what platforms work for you and your particular product or service and what platforms don't. Then we're going into brand health metrics. And this basically tells a complete story about your channel's health. As I said in the beginning, we're looking at audience sentiment, we're looking at brand mentions. And with these two, first, you'll see how people feel about you, how they feel about your product, how they feel about your services. Do they love it? Do they hate it? Do you need to improve anything? See what the sentiment is online from your audience towards your brand. And then when it comes to brand mentions, we've also touched on this yesterday, track conversations about your business, specifically the untagged ones in this case, because that will help you get a better feel for the overall sentiment. And also, do not forget platform-specific analytics. So keep in mind that all platforms have their own sets of analytics. Some might be providing more, others might be providing less. So for instance, if you're looking on Instagram, on your Instagram account, you might be able to see, I believe, up to 3 months of data. But if you're looking at Instagram through a tool like SocialBee, you might be able to access 2 years worth of data from the past. On the other hand, if we're looking at Instagram versus TikTok, you can see the video views on each, which count as impressions, yes, but on TikTok, you can see metrics like video retention rate, you can see the number of seconds that they've spent on your video before they dropped off, you can see the total number of minutes that your video was watched for and things like that. So you can track individual metrics that are specific to each platform to kind of get the best idea of what you need to do moving forward. So now what I'll do is I'll split back into SocialBee, where I've prepared some analytics for you guys. Let's go into more detail about what each of these mean and how you can see them in SocialBee. You can also get, most of these analytics are available directly on the insights page of each platform. In SocialBee, you can find them under the analytics menu, which is the graph icon over here, and you're able to see them specifically for each platform. So you'll need to filter for individual platforms there, and then you can select a time frame. I like to keep it at last month. You can also keep it for the last 14 days if you want to, which will change it, or the last quarter, or you can also use a custom time frame in case you need to as well. But let's keep it for the last month. It's a lot easier to see it this way. So we're looking at the page analytics first. This will tell us how our overall page health is. It's going to tell us more information about how our page is performing. So starting with the number of posts that we have in that time frame. So in the last month, we've had 8 posts. This is telling me how consistent I am with my posting and how that affects the rest of my metrics. It's also comparing my metrics to the similar previous period. So if we're looking at, let's say, January as a full month, it's comparing it to December as a full month. And it's telling me whether my metrics have dropped. If you see them in red, it means that they decreased from the previous similar period. So in December, I've posted less than I had in January, less than in December. But on the other hand, page growth, it's telling me that my page has grown in January as opposed to December. So the posts that I have published, even though they are less, are more focused on the growth, which might be a good thing if my goal is to grow on Facebook. I'm also seeing metrics like page engagement, which is the engagement rate for your overall page across all of your posts. It's the engagement with all of your page. versus post engagement, which is specific to engaging with your posts. You can also see whether this is growing or decreasing, as well as the reach, which is where you see the unique number of people that are seeing your posts. And these are averages. So it's taking the reach from each individual post and creating an average from that. But it's a good way for you to understand where you are in that month. If we look beyond that, you'll see your follower count or your like count. In this case, we're looking at Facebook, so it's the like count. And you'll see how it grows from one day to the next, how it drops. So if there's a downward trajectory like it used to be for us here, then you're gonna look at your content and figure out what you could be doing better to make it an upward trajectory, which is what we have here, so that your overall brand awareness is increasing. You can also look at gained versus lost followers to gain a better understanding of your growth rate here, because this will be very important for you to understand. So let me put it this way. If you have the same number of users following you every single month, but you see that people are actively following you, so you have new followers every month and you're still stuck at the same number, it's probably because the same number of people are unfollowing you at the same time. And they are not necessarily the same people. And it's absolutely normal to have people unfollowing you. So don't get stressed if you see people unfollowing you. It's normal. Audiences change, interests change, people outgrow certain interests. So it's a life cycle to have someone with you. But keep it in a way that you gain more than you lose each month in terms of followers. Then we can look at the overall demographics of your audience, and you can look at this and figure out if your existing audience on that platform matches, at least to a certain extent, the audience that you have in your ideal audience, so in your target audience. If not, then you might be looking at the wrong people in your ideal audience, or you're delivering the wrong content and attracting the wrong audiences. So either or works. But looking at what audience you actually have as opposed to what audience you would love to have can give you great insights on who the people are following you are, and what their interests are, and whether they are part of your target audience. So whether you are actually achieving your goals, which might be growing in sales by looking at these target audiences. You can also see the geographical distribution of your audiences. So for instance, let's say my audience is in the States. I can see here that the majority of my audience is from the States, which is great. That means I am reaching my intended target audience. But if my target audience was mostly from Australia, but my ideal audience is only from the States, then this would not be effective. And I would need to change either my message or my audience in order to cater more to the people who are in my target audience, which is the States. So I hope that makes sense. Then if we look lower here, you'll see the distribution of the engagement throughout your page. And you'll see that you have different elements that you can choose from. So engagement, meaning likes, you can see comments, you can see shares, you can see the general engagement rate. Wherever it has spikes, it's a good sign for your engagement. Wherever it has lows, you would need to work on it a little more. And in SocialBee, you also have a heat map of when your audience is online, or when your posts reach on a weekly basis your audience. So basically on Facebook is the post reach, when your posts are reaching your audience. on Instagram, if I go and I switch to Instagram here, you'll be able to see when your audience is online so that you can share your content when they are actively there. And here as well, you see different demographics for different types of metrics that you can use. By the way, on Instagram, you can see the number of impressions and the reach across each of these. So then I'm going to move back into Facebook here, because the next tab that I have is specific to Facebook and I wanted to show it. So this is the competitor analysis. This is where you can look for any page that is of a competitor of yours, and you can figure out how you're staying compared to them. So if you have 3,000 likes on your Facebook page and they have 50,000, then you know how to calibrate that. Moving on into the post analytics, this is more for engagement metrics, for reach and things like that. So awareness and engagement in particular, it's going to give you the average number of posts in a day, which is probably going to be lower than 1 if you don't post daily. Don't get discouraged by this. This is just an average, and it's telling you how much you're actively posting and whether your posting is increasing or decreasing from the previous similar period as well. You can see the average reach per post, and you can see it broken down on Facebook specifically into paid reach or organic reach. Instagram, for instance, only shows the average reach, so not distinguished between paid or organic. And then you can see the best type of content that performed in that time frame. So you can look at it and see whether your audience prefers carousel posts. You can see whether it prefers image posts, link posts, videos, text posts, whatever else you can share on that particular platform. And then you can look at the post evolution and reach evolution. And this is one of my favorite metrics, actually, because it shows how consistent you are with your posting, which I wasn't here, but it's explaining why I have the metrics that I have. So I wasn't very consistent with my posting, and that's why the average post per day dropped. But I was more intentional with my posting, which is why the average reach per post increased. So you can see how these can change based on your behavior and what you're doing with your posts. When it comes to the reach, you can look at this and figure out if you have any spikes in your reach. You can look at the dates when those spikes occurred, and you can focus more on creating more of that type of content, as that's a good sign usually that people enjoy that type of content from you. On the other hand, if you have a drop in your reach somewhere, you can look at what to avoid. Maybe the content that you're providing is not offering enough information. Maybe it's not the right type of information, or maybe it is, but it's not in the right format for your audience to quickly and easily digest it. Just to give you an example, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a chef, and she creates these most amazing vegan recipes, and she publishes most of them online on Instagram, but she was like, I'm not even getting 15 likes on these. And I took a look at her Instagram, and I was like, noticing that her posts were photos. So the recipes that she was posting was a photo of the final product, not considering any steps that you could be creating or doing when creating that recipe, not showing any ingredients, not showing anything of that. It was just the final product. And that explains the low like count that she was having on those posts, because people were more interested in the steps. As soon as we discovered that, we started working more on reels, on creating content that's more visually appealing, that's a little more active, and showing the steps of each recipe, and showing the texture of the ingredients and the texture of the final product. And her views skyrocketed. Her likes skyrocketed. So it's not necessarily that your content is not great. It might be that the format of that content is not digestible for your audience in that moment in time. Okay, moving back into SocialBee, you can see all of your content broken down into metrics based on the categories that you're having. This way, if you're A/B testing any content pillars, you can see them here. You can see how they perform. You can see whether your audience is interacting with them or not. And you can then take some more informed decisions moving on in your strategy. And then below that, you also see the same type of information for each type of post, seeing if your content is the right format for what your audience prefers. And that way you can see even the engagement rate on each type of content that you have. So you can see all of that and then draw conclusions from here and work on improving your content more and more. So we can look at insights as well in SocialBee. This will tell you your top performing content, and it will also tell you another cool thing, which is the distribution of your content throughout the day. So this, when you look at this heat map or bubble map, you can see it either or. I prefer it as the bubble map. Most people have it as a heat map, but basically you can see when each of your categories are being distributed to your audience. And if we look at these, I have the most engagement filter on here, and there's a little bit of engagement on my weekly blog posts category. There's engagement on Thursday on my product spotlight, but there's no engagement on the category where I want it to be most, which is the zero-click content category that I have created with the purpose of generating engagement. So in this case, I need to look at the content that I have in that category, or the lack thereof, because that's the real explanation because for this, the real explanation for this is that I wanted to show you what it would look like with bad engagement. So I purposely removed some posts from that category to make this metric show up like this. Then, if I am looking for awareness, I can go for most impressions and figure out what's the best time for each one of my categories to get that impression. And now I can see that I have different metrics here. If I'm looking for likes, I can see when's the best time for my posts to get the likes. If I'm looking for shares, the same thing. If I'm looking for comments, the same thing. So you can see that for me, the bestest time that I have is going to be 7 a.m. on Thursday for all these categories, which is very interesting, as that doesn't really change with the promotional category. So it's definitely something to keep in mind when scheduling my content. And then, of course, as I said before, below that, you have your top performing content. So you have top 3 categories, top 3 post types, and top 3 individual posts. Is that US time? No, it's your local time. So if you are on a US time zone, then yes, absolutely, it's US time. For me, this is London time because we're operating on London time. So basically, the time zone that your profile has set in SocialBee is the one that you'll see here. Okay, so we've looked at all of these. It's time for us to look at the final thing here, which is the post history. This will tell us how all of our content performs. So this is best used when you're looking at engagement metrics specifically, but you have several filters here that can help you look at best performing or worst performing content, or even chronological order. There are 2 options here as well. So let's look at the best performing content that we have and see what we can figure out. So we can see that best performing content has something to do with the end of the year, which, sure, it's expected, but this is not something that's sustainable moving forward. However, what I can see is that this particular post is a carousel of the achievements of the year. So it's a great thing to do such a reminder at the end of the year to kind of bring forward all of the achievements. Then we can see another post that performed when it comes to impressions, but not so much to likes. So this one, sure, it has an engagement rate of 3.9, which could be considered good, but that engagement rate is coming from 2 clicks and 1 like. So this is all relative, right? It means that I need to have this blog post a little higher up, a little more visible to the audience. So maybe instead of just dropping the link here, I could create some visuals with some interesting points from that article and share it in a different format to make it work better. So all of these metrics together give you the overall information that you need to gear and guide your strategy moving forward. This step is something that you should do when starting your strategy, and also along the way, maybe every month or so, every quarter, every year, so that you have a full picture of how your brand is evolving online. And if you need to share it with someone else in SocialBee, you can also share it by uploading a logo and creating a PDF report. So let's say this is a summary of our analytics for the last month. This is not an actual report, so I'm not going to download this, but actually you can select the type of information that you have, and then you can download it as a PDF and send it to whoever needs to see it. So you don't have to actually worry about creating reports and graphs and everything. It's done for you directly here, and you can just export it. Okay, so now that we've gone through all of them, let's get back to the slideshow and talk about the practical exercise that we have for today. The final exercise that we have here is to identify 3 of your best performing and worst performing posts from the past month and draw some conclusions on how you can optimize your content moving forward. So once again, we're going to have around 10 minutes for this. Feel free to write that in the chat. I'm going to drink some water in the meantime, rehydrate my voice, and I'm looking forward to seeing your conclusions in the chat. Then we'll come back into the Q&A session. Okay, so we're seeing some comments in the chat, which I wanted to address. So Lorraine says that there's no engagement whatsoever. There's nothing to look at with this practical exercise because she's just taken over a client that only had 2 followers at that time. So there's no data to look through. What could you do in such a scenario to create a good strategy? Well, first of all, set the goals for where you want to go and then monitor moving forward. I guess that's all that you can do at the moment. Work towards getting to a place where you do have analytics and you can look through them and interpret them. Nicole says, I'm in SocialBee in my analytics and I'm seeing external posts on my Instagram insights. Does that mean I post without SocialBee? Yes, that's exactly what it means, that your posts are not going out through SocialBee at the moment. You need to see why your posts are not publishing through SocialBee, or if you want them to publish through SocialBee, right? But regardless of whether you are publishing or not through SocialBee, you should be able to get some good insights from SocialBee, even on those external posts as well. Lorena, I wouldn't say it's disappointing. I would say I would consider it a starting point, and it's a clean slate to work with. So you can only go higher from there, right? You're starting the work, you're putting down the foundation with the strategy that you're creating for this particular client, and gearing them and guiding them towards the right direction. So I wouldn't be disappointed because you don't have anything when you have 2 followers. It's quite normal that your engagement and your analytics will grow as your audience grows. Just focus more on tactics that would work for growing that audience first, and then on the other aspects like engagement and sales and things like that. Okay, so how's everyone doing? I feel like you're all being very quiet tonight. I think I have to start looking at the publishing time for a few weeks, and then I can check out on the content. I don't use SocialBee yet, so the first thing I had to do was to go to each social platform to figure out what was going on. Then I found that I'm not posting too much content. So I need a strategy to do that more often and then start measuring. So very insightful week. I'm super happy to hear that. That's the whole purpose of this week. So if you're not posting enough content, now you know to work on the strategy for your content moving forward, and then look at other aspects of your strategy to work from there. My content needs to be more interactive, I think, minimal engagement. So I'm going to have to get comfortable with reels. Okay, well, engagement doesn't necessarily mean reels, but you could use the tactics that we've learned about yesterday to try and generate more engagement on your content first and see how that goes, and then work from there. Tina asks, how do you see individual post stats? Do you mean in SocialBee or in what platform? In SocialBee, you should be able to see them in the post history tab. So if you have a SocialBee account, you should just go to analytics and then the post history tab and filter for whichever filter works better for your needs at that point. Stats for the exercise, where you're looking at the last month. So you can see the best posts, the best performing posts with the most engagement, and the worst performing posts with the least engagement. That's what I would do, at least. Okay, there's so much to look through. Yeah, so I'm gonna give you some time to do this after the webinar is completed, because we also have a few questions, and I'm sure you have more than what's already been asked. So I'm gonna go ahead and address the questions in just a bit. I have SocialBee, but I realize I do not know how to use it. My podcast editor posts my episode on it. I realize he doesn't know how to use it either, other than posting. I need to learn it myself. Well, good news here. You can book a call with myself or with our team, and we can go through the entire platform for your specific use case. You can get your editor on it as well, and we can work towards making you more comfortable with using your SocialBee account further. Okay, so before I go into the Q&A, final reminder that if you're not yet using SocialBee, you can open up a 14-day free trial by going to app.socialbee.com. And if you're happy with it and you want to go ahead with SocialBee, you can get a 20% discount on the first 3 months of your plan by using the code challenge20 times 3, or a total of 24% discount on the yearly plan if you want to commit to a full year by using the code challenge24 times 1. The reason that you also have the option of a full year is because that's an additional discount. So when you pay for a full year, normally you only pay for 10 out of 12 months, which is a general, I believe, around 16% discount. So on top of that, you'll get to the remaining discount so that you get to the 24 that we mentioned here. And again, if you have any specific questions that you'd like addressed in private, you can reach out to us at anka@socialbee.com or hello@socialbee.com. I see someone asking in the chat how you can reach me for an appointment. You can book a call at socialbee.com/calendar. It's also on our website, so it's super easy to reach us from there. Okay, so let's get into the questions. I'll leave this on just in case, and let's go through these questions here. So first question that we have here is, do you have a spreadsheet or template to calculate the engagement rate? We don't have a template, a spreadsheet. It's a simple formula to calculate the engagement rate. And it's actually the sum of all of your interactions divided by the number of your followers. That's one way to calculate it. Or if you're looking at your reach and multiply it by 100. That's how you calculate the engagement rate. Okay, next question is, what are the most reliable sources of benchmarking data? I like to see these numbers to compare my organization to others, but the numbers that I find are all over the place. Or do you recommend just benchmarking against yourself? That's a good question. I do know a tool that creates benchmarking, but I can't seem to remember the name right now. You know what? I'll look for it and then I'll include it in a follow-up or something. Or I'll reach out to you if I remember it. If I can find it, I'll reach out to you. But other than that, what I would recommend is to periodically, and by periodically I mean maybe once a year or so, do a competitor analysis as well and look at your analytics as much as possible compared to what the industry standards are for that analytics as much as possible, because yes, not all analytics are going to be visible, but you can look at the general sentiment, you can look at engagement, you can look at growth and things like this. Does SocialBee give us the engagement rate? Yes, you can see engagement rates for your page and for your post in your SocialBee page analytics. So yeah, you will be getting these as well. Deb says that there are good examples on how to do competitor analysis online. Yes, I'm sure there are. I don't have any right now, but basically what I like to look at is to do an audit maybe for the past year or so on my profiles, as well as the main competitors in my industry, the ones that are focusing on the exact same target audience or the most of it, and then I compare them. Basically, I compare them to see how my page is standing up against my competitors. Speaking of, I also have Andrea mentioning in the chat for me that there's a question that was sent in earlier while I was doing the presentation. So what are some good tips to increase followers? Giveaways are a good idea in this case because usually one of the requirements in the giveaway is to follow that page. This is a good example of a post that generates both engagement and increases your followers, but it's not recommended that you use it too often because it can artificially grow too much to the point where those people are only interested in the prizes and not in the actual content or the actual products or services that you're selling. So what I would suggest is to do this here and there once in a while to grow your audience, to reach a broader audience, but don't focus on just giveaways. That's one way. Cross-pollination is another one where you collaborate with other people who might have a shared target audience with you. This could mean, so for instance, SocialBee is a platform that works with social media, right? So we're gonna look at anything social media marketing. However, we might pair up with someone who does email marketing very well, and we can cross-pollinate because our audiences are usually interested in the same thing, which is digital marketing in general, as a broader umbrella. So we can cross-pollinate audiences and figure out who from the email marketing audience is interested in social media marketing, and who from our audience is also interested in email marketing. So that's just one way in which you can grow followers as well. You can also work on delivering content that reaches a broader audience, and followers will eventually follow. I promise. The more you're reaching the right audience, the more they will follow. So that's, I think, three already. Three types of tactics that you can use to grow your followers. Okay, so next question. How do you recommend using hashtag collections? I have a long list of researched hashtags on Instagram, which I'm using selectively. My question refers to tracking to see what works the best. I'm starting to use the same collection on a series of posts for several posts to see if the reach increases. It's tricky, and I don't know if there's a tool. It's a lot of manual work and it's time consuming. It's true. It's a lot of manual work with hashtags. Some of the platforms that we have here are actually providing you with information on how those hashtags are performing. Instagram is actually one of those. So you can look at your Instagram posts and figure out how they perform. SocialBee currently doesn't have a tool to help you analyze the performance of your hashtags, but it is on our roadmap for 2024. So it is something that will happen in SocialBee, and it will help speed up the process a lot more. In the meantime, what I would do is look at post performance on Instagram and figure out what hashtags work from there and which are not effective. At the same time, I would look at the size of those hashtags and create a collection of hashtags to use that has an achievable audience. So if you're only using hashtags that are shared across, or that have over 2 million posts shared, but you are an account that has maybe a few thousand followers, your posts will not get seen under those hashtags. So use hashtags that have a lower number of posts used. So maybe something like 10,000 or 30,000 posts, where it's more, it's easier for audiences to notice your post and notice your content and therefore help you grow. The next question is, do you see many hotels utilizing Pinterest successfully? I would say the niche of travel does well on Pinterest generally. It's also because it's so dreamy. It gives you that holiday vibe when you're looking for a vacation. And so in that case, hotels will be a part of it. So depending on the content that you're using on Pinterest to grab that attention, I would say so. I would try it. I would definitely give it a try. The next question that we have here is, to get the analytics, do we need to check each social one by one? My podcast editor posts on SocialBee for me, but I post my own on my consulting business. I would suggest using one by one. Yes, in SocialBee as well. You can filter for individual platforms, and that's because different platforms have different analytics. So you can see things that you wouldn't be able to see on the other platform. And even if, let's say, you're posting the same video on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube, they're going to perform differently on each of those. They're going to have different metrics, and you need to have a full picture before you decide whether that post was successful or not. The next question is, do you access individual posts in analytics? Not sure if I already answered this one or not. It sounds a little familiar. You can use the post history to access individual analytics. Let me know if you need more details on that. Next question that I have here is, does it matter how many accounts your brand follows? Ooh, this is a good one. It does. It does matter if your number of followed accounts is higher than the number of accounts that follows you. Basically, it tells your audience that you're just consuming a lot more content that you're putting out. That's for one. For two, it might mean that you're doing bad practices for growing your account, which a bad practice is where you're artificially trying to grow your account by doing things like following and then unfollowing people, which is not something that I recommend, by the way. Not something that I would do. Or it's just that you're trying to follow a lot of people to get their attention, to get them to follow you, which is not very organic. So I would keep it as a pretty balanced ratio, maybe the following count a little under the number of followers. But obviously that's for the lower accounts. If you have already tens of thousands of followers, what I would say is to keep your following count as low as possible. I'm sure that you're not going to follow 10,000 people actively and look at their content and consume their content. The average good number of following is around, I think, 1,500 to 2,000 if you're following companies and people as well, but not really higher than that. And then the final question that I have here is, what's the best platform for sharing blog posts? Do you share them in whole or only pieces? It depends. Really, it depends on your strategy. It depends on whether you're sharing it for the first time, whether you're repurposing it. SocialBee is a good platform for you to use because you can connect the RSS and connect your blog through the RSS into SocialBee so that it automatically brings everything in, and from there you can share it to your audiences. I would say the first time that you're sharing your blog post, go ahead and share the link as much as possible on the platforms that accommodate that, because you want that audience to go to your website. You want them to read the entire blog post, right? On the other hand, if you're resharing, you might want to just take snippets of information from that blog post and share it as a bite-sized piece of advice. Just kind of a reminder or to generate more interest into the entire blog post. But the ultimate reason why you have a blog is that you want people to read that blog and come to your website, right? So I guess the answer is in there. You should be sharing your blog posts to have people go to your blog and read it. And that's the final question that I have here. So did I miss anything in the chat? If I did, please let me know so that I can reply to it. In the meantime, thank you all for joining. This week was crazy. It was insane and I absolutely loved it. I do see another question here. LinkedIn has showcase pages. How can we effectively use this? To be honest with you, I am not familiar that much with showcase pages, so I'm not able to reply to this, but I will look into it and get back to you. That I can do for sure. Okay, so did you show how to post on Pinterest? I did not show how to post on Pinterest now in this series. Very quickly, when you add a post, when you select Pinterest, it will automatically customize your post for each profile because Pinterest has additional requirements. So you need to select a board, you need to add a source. I'll just grab this link really quick. The source needs to be a URL. So the link of your blog, the link of your website, things like this. You need to add a title to your pin, and then your description, and of course your visual. And that's how you post to Pinterest from SocialBee. Okay, so I'm gonna stop here because if not, we're already in overtime and it's been a long week. So once again, thank you all for joining us every single day this week. It's been insane. I loved every minute of it. in the beginning of this session, I mistakenly mentioned that we're going to be choosing the winners on Monday. It's actually Tuesday. So you'll learn on Tuesday if you won one of the 6 prizes that we are offering or not. Again, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to reach out to us, anka@socialbee.com or hello@socialbee.com, and we'll be more than happy to help. And don't forget to use the codes if you are just starting out with SocialBee: challenge 20 times 3 or challenge 24 times 1. One quick last question. Are there short video tutorials on YouTube on specific SocialBee features and how to use them? Yes. We're also working on updating a lot of them, so there will be even more on our channel. And there's always a monthly webinar where I just do a general walkthrough, like the one that we've seen this week, that goes through all the new features, and we also have a Q&A session and everything. So you'll always have access to the newest features on SocialBee as well. Okay, so now we're really done. Thank you all for joining, and I'll see you guys in our next webinars. And fingers crossed with your strategy. Let me know how it works at the end of the year, okay? Have a nice rest of the day wherever you are in the world.